ready for a Jony Ive AI device. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hey everyone, happy Friday to you. You know, I'm a glass half full kind of guy, so I'm optimistic today. After a devastating loss the other night, I'm hoping my Knicks bounce back and beat the Pacers tonight at the Garden to even the series. But let me tell you what's got me even more excited. You know, many people think that Steve Jobs was the front man, but the real little elf in the back who was designing all those cool Apple products when Apple made cool products was Jony Ive. And, you know, the good folks at AI just bought the rest of the company that they didn't already own of Johnny's company to create AI-empowered devices. And I can't wait to see some of the cool stuff Jony Ive and his design team are going to come up with. We'll get more into it in a second. Welcome to our Friday edition. We've got some really cool people to talk about it with. Let me introduce you to them. This is really an East Coast, West Coast kind of day. We're going to fly over the rest of the country. Sitting, you know, the czar of the valley, purveying over all that he can see, kind of like Simba. It's all yours, the circle of life. He's our Silicon Valley editor, Jon Swartz. Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm good. So speaking of Jony Ive, last night, so we taped this on Thursday morning. Last night, Wednesday night, I went to an event in Pacific Heights, which is where he lives. And there is a startup that did an event at an open house at a mansion that's for sale. He was invited to the party. I don't know if he ever showed up. I left if he did show up, but I don't think he would have. He's probably drunk somewhere right now after celebrating that. Oh, I would be.
You know. $6.5 billion. That's and we'll get into it, but it's really only a little piece. He's still gonna have his own company and people, but we'll get into it. John, good to have you here. I love Pacific Heights. I stayed there during RSA.
I remember that.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Good
it's
stuff.
A beautiful area. I used to live in an apartment building in Pacific Heights.
I stayed in an old Victorian mansion there. Well, piece of a mansion. It was 2 floors, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths. It was nice.
This place was 5 stories. Yeah, incredible.
Nice. Well, let's move on from our royalty to the Duchess of Silicon Valley. She's marketing the Duchess. That's always a good name. One and only Lisa Martin. Hey, Lisa, how are you?
Alan, I'm doing great. Great to see you and Mike and John. Now I know since my Warriors are out of the playoffs, I don't know, John, how you feel. Because Alan and Mike, you're big Knicks fans, I'm going to put all my energy into rooting for the Knicks.
All right. We need the help. We need the help. Too bad you couldn't help us the other night. You know, just hit a foul shot would have helped. But anyway, thanks for being here, Lisa. Fresh off your Boomy emceeing gig. That looked like a lot of fun. I saw robots.
Yes, I got to interact with Robot on stage, and it actually worked beautifully. It was a blast. Great time there. Great energy. Great customers, partners. Great Boomy folks. It was just wonderful.
Good stuff. And by the time you see this, he'll hopefully be home from Boston, unless they've kept him hostage there now. Who knows? He's our Chief Content Officer, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm up here in Boston where they throw tea in the harbor and we don't need no stinking royalty.
Yeah. But they don't have a basketball team in the playoffs anymore. Just
true.
saying.
And while I was up here, I went to a Mets Red Sox game, and you know it's a rare moment, but I got to cheer "Let's Go Mets," so you probably won't hear that very often.
So you're one of those guys who would cheer for the Mets over the Red Sox?
Oh, most definitely.
See, I look for a 0-0 tie. I don't want to see any of those teams win. But anyway, hey, let's move it in. So look, $6.5 billion, all equity, no cash exchanged hands here. So I don't know how drunk Johnny got. Though look, Jony Ives isn't hurting for money, but Mike, what do we got here?
Well, it's pretty amazing. It seems to be another one of these situations in the valley where somebody's ascribing value based on, I don't know what the math is here, but sounds kind of fictional to me, but great for them. I'm happy that it makes sense to some venture capitalist somewhere. But the rest of the world is scratching their head going, well, what the heck could you possibly come up with that I'm not already going to get from Apple, Samsung, and a dozen other consumer electronics companies? John, any idea what's going on here?
Well, this idea, according to the video that Sam Altman and Jony Ive made, is that they are going to create this family of AI products. Now, whether these are glasses, jewelry, smart home devices, we don't know. Maybe gadgets of some sort, but they're going to be available next year, or the first one's going to be available next year. Um, it's interesting because this deal is, while surprising, it really isn't surprising because these two companies have been working together. IO, which is a startup from Johnny, and then Altman's OpenAI. They've been talking for a couple of years, and in fact, I've mentioned in a profile in the New York Times that he was working with them, and that there had been reports and the information, Bloomberg and others, that there might be a deal, if not at the very least, a partnership. So as you mentioned, Mike, yeah, there are a number of companies. There's Meta, there's Google, there's Samsung, there's Apple, which we shouldn't discount at all. They're all going to be buying into this area. This area has actually not had a lot of success. I mean, we've had a couple of well-known failures that I pointed out and made light of. And said they just weren't the right products for the right time. My takeaway from this isn't as much about the products, but at the lost opportunity at Apple. And to me, it's like a story about Apple in a certain way and what happened with Tim Cook. So if you go back in time, Johnny left in 2019. He was there almost 30 years at Apple. And he left after years of frustration from structural changes and this kind of change in culture, from the company being a design heavy company to being utilitarian. I can't pronounce that word. But in any event, he moves on. Apple continues to struggle to innovate, I think, in the last few years. Cook is still there. I was talking to some people last night about this who know the players, and there are beginning to be murmurs of how long is Cook going to be running Apple. I mean, maybe it's time to make a transition eventually into someone who's more of an innovation person, and that it all hinges on how Apple does with Apple Intelligence, and we're going to know within the next year or two. But I think that's something that bears looking at in the long term versus this kind of short term win for OpenAI.
Lisa, we talked about this in the past, but the devices are already kind of creepy. They're already listening in and kind of tracking our behavior, and now they're going to have artificial intelligence. And I can only imagine how much more creepy things might be. I mean, am I going to have to build some, area of my house that is completely soundproof so I can have a private conversation with somebody, or what?
Not a bad idea,
The
actually.
code
I
of
wish
silence.
the cone of shame. I wish this wall was soundproof.
Uh,
What's interesting about it, and first of all, that video was a little bit mysterious. Now, they were having coffees, but there was wine behind them in that bar that they were in. Anyway, just saying. But what was interesting to me was that Sam Altman said that we have this opportunity to kind of completely reimagine what it means to use a computer. So kind of a vague but bold statement there. But I think from a Silicon Valley perspective, AI is getting creepier. I actually talked about it on the radio this morning. I had a message to graduates about why not to be concerned and why you should partner with AI. But I think what this means for Silicon Valley is AI leadership. I think this acquisition would solidify OpenAI as a leader in consumer AI in that space. It's going to put pressure on competitors like Google and Meta and Apple because they need to accelerate. John, you talked about Apple. Worldwide Developer Conference is coming up in less than a month. And so hopefully we'll hear some more innovation from Apple with respect to Apple Intelligence. But I think the AI leadership for OpenAI could get much stronger. I also think that this partnership between IO and OpenAI could lead to sort of mysterious right now, but really revolutionary AI products that apparently they say will change the way people interact with technology. So like I said, it's a little bit mysterious, but I think there could be some new market opportunities as well. Like John, you mentioned potentially, things coming into market next year, maybe smart home gadgets, creating new opportunities that could disrupt traditional industries. So I think it's an interesting acquisition, a little bit mysterious. And they were just covering it about a half an hour ago on my local NBC station. And it's definitely one that's piquing a lot of interest in the Valley and beyond.
Alan, aka Gadget Boy, you're usually at the front of the line for any of these
I
new
was, but you
innovations.
didn't call on me. I raised my hand. I was trying to follow the rules. So let me give you Shimmy's take on this one. So first of all, there's an old saying in baseball and football. A team takes on the character of its coach. When your coach is Tim Cook, you have a rather utilitarian team. So it's no surprise that Apple's product line kind of mirrors Tim's personality and who he is. Now, so I'm not surprised by that. On the other hand, I think you guys are just barking up only one tree and missing the forest. Jony Ive didn't just make consumer products at Apple. He didn't make just, I don't want to say the word, it's liable to pop up here. He didn't want to just say Siri. Jony really was responsible. Steve Jobs had the final sign-off and everything, but Jony was responsible for the look and feel of that Macintosh. That silver laptop with the white apple on it that lit up, that you knew you had an Apple. It made you feel just a little special. You could put the sticker over it and all kinds of things happen. That's Jony Ive's. The look and feel of Mac OS. Why, it looked so much more elegant than Windows did. That's Jony Ive's. This is a master of design, a master. What fonts? Steve Jobs was known to be fanatical about what fonts they're used. More than, right? Remember, Apple had their fonts. That's Jony Ive's. So when you got a Jony Ive, that's why I think the buzz is, that's why they paid $6.5 billion. It's not to make creepy AI.
Well, it was, he designed iPhone, of course, even the Apple Park. Apple Park was his last project.
Yeah, which they didn't go forward with. But, when Sam Altman talks about redesigning a computer, are we going to have some guy running down the thing, throwing a hammer into the screen where Trump's talking or something? Not a bad idea. But anyway, I think what they're betting here is trying to catch lightning in the bottle again, which is have Jony Ives and team come up with AI devices that are truly extraordinary, revolutionary, the very opposite of utilitarian. I'm not looking for, Apple's not going to come out with anything exciting. You think they are? No. But Jony Ives can. And I think that's what Sam Altman is betting $6.5 billion. One other quick thing though. From a deal perspective, OpenAI already owned, I believe, like 23% of I.O. So they just bought the other 75% in essence. But they didn't really buy Jony. Jony and his team still have this other company that sounds pretty Silicon Valley-y, new agey to me, but that's him. And so he's still going to be doing his things outside of this I.O. deal. But me, for one, I'm excited as heck to see what he builds out of this.
Yeah, so it's called, the collective is called Love From. The interesting thing too is a bunch of the Apple key designers who he worked with him. And so this is the thing that I keep running across. And this is why I'm convinced that Cook is in a transition period. I don't mean to just blow smoke, but I've run into 5 or 6 people who have moved on to completely different companies doing incredible interesting things. They didn't do them at Apple.
There's an argument to be made that Tim Cook was the right person at the right time for the right job there. You had Job, he left. There had to be a transition. Jony Ive and those people moved out. They're a different company than they were.
But that was 14 years ago. Jobs died. They passed on the torch because Jobs
And
was
look, if you are an Apple shareholder, you're not crying in your beer over how your stock's done this last 14 years. Tim, he's the right guy for that job. But maybe Apple is no longer the company that makes exciting, revolutionary products. Maybe they make evolution. There's an argument that says the iPhone has been evolutionary since the iPhone 3. There's been nothing. I just got my wife a 16 Pro. She replaced, I think it was a 13, and she doesn't know the difference.
it's just minor iterations every year, and they play this smoke and mirrors game where the
Absolutely.
press
They're
claps
good at it. But Jony Ives, but here you got a blank piece of paper here for this maestro to design on, right? Who knows? I don't know if we even know. We're assuming consumer devices. We're assuming creepy AI. Who knows? Is it a robot? Is it a humanoid robot? Is it some other pet? Is it something we haven't thought about? He's not a Me Too kind of guy. So I don't expect Me Too.
I think it's going to be a mix of things. It'll be robots and all kinds of things embedded into appliances I don't think it's going to be any one thing. It's more about the experience that will happen across
It's going to
multiple
be a
things.
look and feel of these products that you're going to know, just like you knew it was an Apple product, even the Newton.
And the way they interact. Now, here's the part I am a little bit concerned about as we get into this brave new world is, theoretically agents will talk to each other, but I got a sneaking suspicion that, Apple AI is going to talk better to Apple AI than it does Samsung AI and vice versa, right?
They're going to
So
embrace and extend the AI agent interface.
Maybe the walled garden AI approach.
Yeah. So there might be all these walled gardens that start to emerge around all this AI stuff that, I don't want to have that conversation over and over again every time there's an innovation. I just want stuff to work together.
So then go to Google. There are plenty of Apple fanboys out here who are going to be fine with it. I'm telling you right now, you're not going to change that.
Well, then I will just stay with my Google phone and my Google earbuds and all my other Google gadgets, because at least I feel like
you're not going to have the cool stuff. And maybe Jony Ives' OpenAI will be more open. I don't know.
I don't know, maybe, but you are telling me that some boomer is going to build something really cool for the 20-year-old set. I don't know. Maybe there's a kid out there who's got a better idea and a better
The
feel
greatest generation, my friend. Well, not us. It was our parents. All right. On that note, let's take a break. We were watching Techstrong Gang. We're going to come back and talk. SAP joins the agent craze, the race. Ready, set, go. You're watching the gang.
Hey folks, we're back, and yes, if you watched any episode this week, you know that there was more shows this week than I can remember at any given time, and SAP had their own little event called SAP Sapphire, which they were all down in, I think it was Orlando. And one of the things they were talking about is agents on steroids, and it was a network of agents who are going to be what they described as omnipresent. And the idea here is that these agents are continuously monitoring every activity, and then suggesting in combination with each other helpful things to be done. And in SAP's mind, this is how they're going to automate entire end-to-end processes. So, Alan, what's your take on this? It's not much different than what Microsoft was describing, but very, ERP kind of CRM specific.
It's Triple Crown season, right? The Preakness, I forgot who won the Preakness. It's a one-word name, not justify. Journalism. Of course you would know that one, John. Yeah. journalism won the Preakness, came in second in the Derby. I feel like I'm watching a horse race here. And really, SAP went out of the gate at a long shot of about 45-1. You want to talk about the ultimate Me Too? And look, let's be fair. SAP doesn't make their bones on leading the pack. SAP makes their bones on, they've already got a huge install base who use their ERP tools. There's a lot of inertia steering that ship. They don't need to be the first to market. They just need to be decent. They need to be, they can't be last as they turn for home on that last turn, right? They can't be last. But if they're in the middle of the pack, their customers are going to be happy because it's too much of a hassle to tear that out and go try to use one of these cutting edge ones that try to, win the race necessarily. So when you look at what they've announced here, it's a solid set of what is becoming run-of-the-mill AI agents that do tasks in their ERP world. But all sounds great. But here's where I think we've got to be cautious. Everything we've heard this week, and I mean everything we've heard this week, not from just SAP, but from Microsoft and Dell and all of these other places that we've reported from this week. These are all on the come. None of this is necessarily real right now, right? It's all what's coming. Maybe it's in beta or pieces of it have rolled out. But this is all, typical Silicon Valley tech industry, selling the dream, brother, selling the dream. And what's going to happen is at some point, we're going to separate winners and losers based upon who converted their dream to reality. Now, you can make fun of SAP as I did, right, as the 45-1 shot. But the dream they sell isn't far-fetched. It's middling of the road. And they will, there's little doubt in my mind, they'll deliver. It may not be the coolest, greatest, sharpest, sexiest thing out there, but it'll work for them. It may not be the first, it won't be the last, but it'll work. And that's SAP right there.
And there's two things about this that are unclear. One is AI is expensive. So now I'm going to have, and these are systems of record. So, it might still be cheaper to actually have a human go enter a piece of data than use the AI, because the AI is going to run up a bunch of tokens, and those tokens will quickly add up. I mean, a simple process is like 40 or 50 token alone.
I get it, but here's the bet that's being made here by all these companies as well, right? Like a sort of a Moore's law kind of equation that, as the time ray goes forward left to right, the cost of AI computing comes down.
Right, but it ain't happening this year or next, so that's
all.
Well,
a lot of these agents may not be out here this year and maybe next year, but if we're not going to fundamentally change the cost of AI, all of this stuff that we've been talking about for the last 6 months is crack that we're smoking, right? And let's get off the crack. We're all bet that what made DeepSeek the story it was, because they could do it cheaper. But that's the way transistors gave way to circuits, and electronics get shrinking, and Moore's law in terms of computing. This is what we do. I think that bet is kind of already baked into our system.
I think everybody's trying to figure out if this is a 2026 phenomenon or a 2027 and beyond phenomenon. That's all we're trying. I think everybody agrees it's going to happen. Not everybody seems to know for sure the when of it.
No, but here's this Shimmy's take on these things. Not just this, but with every technical innovation that I've come in, it gets announced in my own hype cycle. It gets announced out here. the hype gets crazy up here. It starts getting real. And there's always going to be pundits who said, not real yet, not real yet, not real yet, not real yet, not real. And then at some point, all of a sudden, someone says, hey, wait a second, it's real. I don't know when that point's going to be because I think that's different for different people, right? My Silicon Valley friends tend to get a lot more excited faster than maybe the cynical New Yorkers, right? And you may say it's real a lot before Mike's going to say it's real. I'm from Florida. We're plastic, and
So when I used to work at Forbes years and years ago, we would fall into this. We had a Silicon Valley bureau, and we would get excited and hyped by things, and then the guys back in New York would always like throw water on it, and it was always like in between. In the midpoint was right. I mean, and I think this kind of interesting thing about SAP. I like SAP. I respect them, but I think you're absolutely right, Alan. They're not trying to win any argument. They're not trying to blow us over. They're just trying to be good enough. And I don't mean that as a put down.
no,
And that's reputation, and it works.
Well,
So kudos to them for picking their lane.
let me paint the SAP nightmare scenario for you. So imagine a world where there are these agents, but they're not SAP agents, but they're able to invoke SAP services on the back end. So they could be agents from, I don't know, Microsoft, Apple, pick them. And then everything that SAP does is a back end service, and it becomes essentially a headless service. And there is no SAP brand in front of you anymore. It's just something that's being invoked in the back end. And then that becomes a set of commodity processes on the back end. And Lisa, as a marketer, can you feel the pit in your stomach start to get queasy if you're thinking about, the SAP brand?
I'm not sure there's a pit in my stomach. In fact, I don't think there is. I think what they did well with the announcements was the messaging. They're aiming to automate tasks and improve efficiency using AI agents. That's what they want to deliver for their bread and butter customers, of which there are so many. They talked about the Joule AI agents really being designed to understand the context of tasks and provide that personalized support that we all want. I don't think they're concerned about their brand being absconded or blurred away. I think what they want to do is really provide this framework for orchestrating these agents so that there's integration with other frameworks and end-to-end process automation. And I think at the end of the day, what they want to do is delight their customers and make those tasks automated, contextualized, and personalized. And that's kind of what they said in what they were announcing this week. So I don't think they're concerned about the lines being blurred as much as they are delighting their existing customer base.
And Mike, in terms of non-SAP agents working with SAP, I think that's going to be a conscious decision SAP makes because they could spin it as them being, the platform that the whole ecosystem works for, or they could decide they're not gonna. They're gonna take an Apple approach, if you will, and say, well, it works, a little bit with Microsoft, but it works best with our own agents.
Or they might go the other way and say our agent's going to be, the superior agent, and my agent can kick your agent's ass, and therefore it will do what I tell it.
Can we play that song, Secret Agent Man? Secret Agent Man. Look, this whole agent thing is going to play out. It's going to be very, I had the conversation with Mihir, I forgot Mihir's last name, the Automation Anywhere CEO. Shukla, Mihir Shukla. He's a CEO, 20-year CEO at Automation Anywhere. It's not whose agent you use, because we're all going to use agents from everywhere. It's whose agent orchestrator you use that they give a hell about. And I think that is, Mihir's no dummy, right? And I think he's dead on. And I think that's where the smart money is making their bets. ServiceNow making their bet on it. Salesforce, Benioff making their bet on it. Mihir making his bet on it. That's the key. We're going to use, agents from everywhere and anywhere. Some will be ephemeral, some will be persistent. Some will be good, some will be bad. Some might be really elegant, designed by Jony Ive. I'm kidding. But who do we use to orchestrate? How do we manage this army of agents doing our bidding? Those will be the big winners in this thing.
All right. So it's going to be like Batman. You're going to get the agent you need, not deserve, and see how it goes.
Like, no, Bateman,
Bateman.
right? Love those commercials. All right.
Yeah, that's
All right. We've taken it to the umpteenth. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong TV. We'll be back in a minute.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
All right, folks, we're back with the last show of the week. Boy, I got to tell you, I'm tired. But Dell World Technologies was out there, and they were talking up their new server platforms and partnerships with AMD and how they're going to be able to use AI accelerators from NVIDIA and AMD and Intel. And they also previewed some new systems where they're going to combine what they're calling HCI and traditional 3-tier systems into this one integrated system. And we talked about something similar to that a week or so ago as well. But Lisa, one thing you got to say about Dell and all these guys, for all the chat about software, maybe it's the hardware guys that are going to make all the money.
Very well could be. Yep, this week was Dell Technologies World. I wasn't there this week. I had a lot of friends who were, so I saw tons of coverage, lots of selfies with Michael Dell. He's always so good about that. But they announced this range of infrastructure innovations that are designed to support AI workloads. They talked about validated designs for AI. They talked about AI-ready servers. So there's your point there, Mike, about the hardware guys, because Dell has introduced AI-ready servers. They say, hey, these are optimized for performance, for efficiency to support demanding AI workloads. They also talked about some new storage and networking solutions, all designed to support those AI workloads. But I think why this matters for customers is what Dell is trying to say is that, hey, guys, we're going to simplify AI adoption for you. Every company, we talked about this, Alan at RSAC a couple of weeks ago, every company has to have an AI story. Well, it's challenging. It's very complex, especially when you bring in the cyber resilience sphere, if you will. But I think what Dell is trying to do here is simplify the adoption for customers of AI by providing these solutions that they're pre-configured, they're pre-tested. They're also trying to improve performance so that customers can run AI workloads more effectively. Simplification, more effective, more efficient. And also what they're saying is that, hey, customers, if you leverage our AI-ready infrastructure, you're going to gain a competitive advantage because you're going to be able to deploy AI solutions faster and more efficiently than your competitors. So that was kind of, I think, thematically what I got out of what they're announcing. Really efficiency, performance, make AI adoption easier in this complex landscape.
There's a tension in all of this conversation too. And I'd love to, I'll get Alan's opinion on it because I think we've seen this before. But, a lot of the AI platforms that are in use today are do-it-yourself kind of things that people stitch together and integrated, and they're hard to support, but they were typically created by infrastructure people that were attached specifically to a data science team. And now, as we see more of the inference start to be running and the software artifacts themselves are getting built into DevOps workflows, there's an argument to be said that it's time to just build standardized platforms that you get from a Dell or an HPE or somebody else in much the way you buy any other server. So are we on the cusp of that, Al?
Are we on the cusp of it? This goes back to the AI agent thing, right? So let me back up. Yes, we're on the cusp of it, but when do we actually get there? John may think we get there a lot sooner than you may think we get there, right? Because there's an argument to be made. What we've got now is But what's coming down the pike right now is there. It's, it may not be all the way there that we it's not achieving the full promise, but we're already starting to see this stuff get real to a certain extent, right? And now, where we talked about SAP being not a laggard, but the second half of the mainstream, let's call it, kind of company. That's their market, not the early adopters and not the first half of the mainstream. Dell is very much also a company that doesn't like to jump into a market unless that market is substantial and unless Dell feels good that they can capture a substantial share of that substantial market. Emphasis on substantial. So when you see a company like Dell coming out with this, they've already validated in their minds that this is a substantial market, not 10 years from now. Now, it's a substantial market now. So we're on the cusp. And they're making their play to capture their fair share of that market, which in Michael Dell's mind is always an outsized share of that pie, right? It's a big piece, a double piece of pie. And so I think there's your answer. If Dell's saying it, they're doing it, it's real. Dell doesn't usually, they're not Apple, though Apple's never a first to market company either, right? Dell's not a first to market company. So we're past the cusp.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Dell always waits to, when there's enough critical mass of customers to buy something that in numbers that can be measured in millions and billions, that's when they start worrying about it.
Yep. And only when they have a plan to be a substantial player in it. They never want to be a fringe player.
And they leverage their ecosystem well. To your point, Alan, they don't want to be a fringe player, but they also leverage that ecosystem well. And some of the things they announced, I thought, hey, I could see new partnerships here, new collaborations, and the AI ecosystem, which would further solidify them as one of the go-to platforms.
The big takeaway in a sense, like where Mike was, this is, I think Mike would agree, this is probably as many announcements and many big companies competing against each other in the same space that I've seen in 1 week, maybe in decades. And I think that the takeaways, we have the leaders making their moves, but we also, as you said, Alan, SAP and Dell. And what to me was always interesting, and I keep asking the companies themselves that are going to make these decisions, and they're all kind of in a kind of a holding pattern, like a plane flying over a city waiting to land. They're just waiting for this stuff to come out. And again, just to synthesize what you've all said already, we don't know what the timing is going to be, but it's definitely going to happen. And again, the telling point to me is, like OpenAI says, well, this IO project, the first big products next year, Google Gemini 2.5, the latest announcement that they make. Well, we'll have more details later. That's what the holding pattern is about. And they're also waiting for what Apple has to say. So it's all kind of just this huge rush and then a wait.
Dell is also betting on the CIO, and most of those CIOs are kind of anxiously looking across the room there at these AI budgets that are starting to increase within their organization and sucking up more of the dollars. And they want control of those budgets because they're going to be large scale projects, and you can then roll up all kinds of interesting upgrades alongside that AI project, much like a bill going through Congress. And they want to be able to go back to the CFO and say, yeah, we have an AI motion. It's big, but it includes all these pieces and standardized stuff that we can manage. And they're used to making that kind of case versus, I don't know if, a lot of the internal IT organizations that I know, I don't think they can build custom systems and never maintain them. I think they've lost that skill over the years.
And for good reason. I mean, it's just, who wants to build custom system one-offs anymore? Right? I just, I think back to when I was at Interliant, we were in the data center business and all the different servers and machines. And, we bought 30 companies in 36 months. Most of them were hosting companies. And, the disparity between the machines you would see from company to company. Some people had white box PCs that they kind of went out and got the motherboards themselves and built, sitting in baker's racks, right? Other people really had like rack-mounted servers. Then Cobalt came out with this little 1U blue server that had red lights that blinked. I remember asking Pat Conti, their head of sales, Pat, what do the red lights blinking symbolize? He said, nothing, but they're cool as shit, aren't they? And I said, yeah, they are. And everybody started, and we were able to sell those $99 a month, dedicated server. Sold them like hotcakes, right? This is, we're talking about, by the way, we were Dell hosts. I did that deal. Interline, the company I helped put together, was Dell hosted. We were an OEM relationship. Dell invested in us. And that was another sweet deal, right? For Dell. We used to have to buy the server. They would sell it. They would sell it for 40% more than we could sell it for, because our salespeople stunk compared to Dell. We'd have to buy the server from them, so we pay them for it. Then Dell would collect the money from the end user every month for hosting and give us a piece of that for what we did. So they made money on the in, the out, and the in-between, and we were sitting there having to keep the customer happy. But it brought a lot of business into us because, it allowed us to be Dell hosts. And
This is the magic of a thing called the channel, right? And Dell is a master of the channel.
So good for them. And next generation servers, and so those are probably the least. I was reading the coverage like you were. At least we had a lot of Futurum folks there. Okay, there's a new Power Edge. Wow. Honest.
But compute and storage get to scale independently, but you buy them together in a bundle and can centrally manage them. Does that not get your heart going?
Yeah, just a little bit. Just a little bit. But there are people who geek out on that, right? And so more power to them. Anyway, let's call a wrap on this week's Techstrong Gang, the week of AI, agentic AI conferences. It shall henceforth be known as. Have a great weekend. Hey, just a heads up, for those in the U.S., this, but for around the world, this weekend is what we call Memorial Day weekend, where we honor our fallen soldiers over the years on Monday. So we will not be doing a show on Monday. We'll be returning on Tuesday. And enjoy the long weekend if you are lucky enough to have the long weekend. We have, as usual, a full Techstrong TV schedule right behind today's show, so you can watch it the rest of today. And again, quick reminder, we are on our OTT channel. Go check us out on Roku, Amazon, Apple TV, iOS, or Android. Mike, Jon, Lisa, thank you very much. Thank you for watching. This is Alan Schimmel. We're out.